Welcome to Agape is Love, and thank you for joining us. We are a new evolving ministry, a unity community. Our outreach is a ministry of people for people who lovingly serve others in outreach to educate, promote, and provide opportunities for spiritual and community development. We are excited to share this edition of our service with you. Please leave us comments, like, share, and spread the word.
So I'm here to talk about recovery, spirituality, and growth. And my talk this time is called The Wisdom to Know the Difference. And you'll know that from the Serenity Prayer, part of the Serenity Prayer, the third line. And the wisdom to know the difference and how knowing the difference changes everything. So I started in recovery 22 years ago, and I'm not trying to impress you with that. I'm just trying to let you know that it was one day at a time for 22 years now. And most people think that when they say this line, the Serenity Prayer, it's just a line. And I know that when I first started, I was the same way. It was like, okay, we say this thing at the end of our meeting, this is what we do. And I didn't really pay too much attention to it because I was focused on the courage and the serenity part. I was just like, okay, God grant me this serenity, so I need some peace. You know, didn't have a whole lot of peace at the time in my life when I started in there. And sometimes I don't now. But the whole thing is, if you've never heard it before, which I hope that you have, but if you haven't, is God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And wisdom wasn't taught in my family of origin. I'm pretty sure most of you feel the same way. When we're born into these families, we learn to cope in different ways because we weren't taught how to cope in the ways that most people are. And growing up in a diseased family, the dis-ease follows you. It followed me. It follows us everywhere we go. So, and we saw our families. We saw a lot of loss, and it was a high cost because there was incarceration. There were deadly car crashes. There were overdoses. And there was an early death from liver disease. And these things are, when you don't have coping skills, are really hard to get through. So you carry them into your young adult life, and you keep, because you don't know. Me, I stuffed them. I didn't know what to do with them, so I stuffed them because I didn't know how to cope with them. And as a child of child of alcoholics, that was the first meeting I attended when I was 22 years old. And I went there for 6 weeks. I went to the Adult Children's of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was just like, you know what? Now I can blame them. And that's kind of what I did. That's how those weren't healthy coping skills, but it was the only way I could cope at the time. It was the best that I could do with what I had, right? So when we have this, we pull it into I pulled it into my young adulthood, and of course, in my 20s, I had children. So I was also raising my children in opposite ways that my parents were raising me. It wasn't the same way because I was determined that I wasn't going to be like them. But because I didn't have any skills to raise them, I was just making up skills and hoping that we were for the best. And I didn't know any better. And it was a difficult time in our lives. When I did finally find recovery, my kids were already in, they were in their teens, early teens when I did finally find. No, they were still a little younger than that, because back then when you could go to a meeting, you could have your kids sit in a corner and play and draw while you did the meeting, which was kind of cool, but then again, we're exposing them to everything that everybody's saying, and at the meetings, you need to be able to be open and honest when you go there. So our lives begin to follow what our family did, and we have to change that somehow, and that's when we find recovery. And I found God when I was, haven't talked about this in a long time. When I was in the bottom of a closet in a fetal position, crying out for God because I felt like He had abandoned me. And I asked Him to bring me a hug because I didn't believe He existed. And it didn't even take 30 seconds before someone walked through the door and said, "Do you need a hug?" And I just realized that He had not abandoned me, that I had abandoned Him. So I started my recovery path, and I found my higher power, and I started going to meetings, and I started sharing. And I know that there's a lot of the same tools that we always have. I'm going to give you some of those most often tools that people give us, right? Stay off slippery slopes. A slippery slope, right? So you have to change who you hang out with. You have to change the places that you go. I loved to go dancing back then. I loved to dance with the band. I was one of those girls, So you have to change these habits. Rigorous honesty. What is that? I was never taught to be honest. In fact, nobody knew how deceitful our family was because from the outside, we looked like a normal Mormon family. Whoa-ho, we weren't, And find a support group. You need more than one support group. A home group is great. That's where you feel most comfortable. And you need a short list of people that you can really tell everything to. I listen to and read some books from, I don't know if you've heard of the author Brene Brown. She's amazing. She's got a PhD, and she researches shame and vulnerability. And she says you need to keep a 1 inch by 1 inch square piece of paper in your purse or pocket. And any name you can fit on that, those are the people that you can call at 2 a.m. when you're down in the gutter and you need somebody to not come and fix you, but to tell you, yep, I've been in the gutter, here I am, I'll sit in the gutter with you for a while. Because that, for me, was something I learned. I would share with everybody because I thought everybody was going to help save me. Everybody had the answers but me, and that wasn't it. So I do have that one small piece of paper with people that I can call. And those are the people I can be completely honest with. All right, another step is to manage your urges. That's a tough one. But when you realize that the urge usually only lasts for a short period. They say it usually lasts between 15 and 30 minutes. If you can manage to get through that by exercising or whatever, they call somebody, just talk to somebody, call your sponsor, go for a walk, go for a hike, something to get through that. An activity that means something to you that would help you clear your mind, help me clear my mind, and it's hiking. One of the things that I do is I like to go outside and be with nature. So, and also be of service. Find a way to give back to the community, and they talk about that all the time. Because even if you've only been there for a day, you can hand somebody a cup of coffee. And it is, you can find that new person that's been there, that's their first day, and find them and give them a cup of coffee and sit with them and let them know they're not alone. But the tools to me that aren't talked about frequently are very powerful ones, and it took me a lot time longer after this to figure these out, is we have to manage our mental health. That's important. A lot of times with these, we have co-occurring diseases with this, the alcoholism and the mental health issues, and people will medicate because they're in pain mentally, and then it all goes hand in hand. So if we can manage our mental health as well. And the field is so much different it is now than it was when I started 22 years ago. It was get sober and your mental health will get clear. It's not necessarily so. There's not such a cut and dry line anymore. We really need to spend time managing our mental health. And managing physical pain is huge. When I'm in physical pain, and I had a car accident almost 2 years ago, managing that physical pain, when I get in pain, nothing else exists. I mean, everything is exacerbated by it. I'm crankier, I'm angrier, I'm short-tempered, so these things can cost us, and I feel like they don't talk about that a lot. One huge thing is prepare your story. Now, people won't look at that and go, what do you mean by that? I have had to try to justify the fact that I won't take a drink at a party, at a family member's house. Why don't you drink? I mean, I'll make smart aleck remarks like, well, the tables can't hold me anymore, and I like to dance on the tabletops when I'm drunk. But, literally find a short story and a long story, something really quick and sweet that you can tell people, because they are going to ask you, and they're going to go, oh, but one won't hurt. Somebody's going to say that. And if you're putting yourself in that position too many times, you're going to fall on that slippery slope. So be careful. Have a story, but don't rely on it every single time you go out and think you can go into the same thing and just use your story to get out of it. We need to know what we can say. And for me, the last one I have is I found a mantra. start getting on that slippery slope or start feeling like I'm, okay, that this is not a good day. I wish I could have a drink. And those come. It's still, it can be 22 years, but it's still one day at a time. I still only have today. I only have today. So I have friends that have spent 30 years and went back out. It happens. So have a mantra, have something to say. My something to say is the Serenity Prayer. And it's the wisdom to know the difference. Okay? So here's here's what we say, what I say. We used to say, this is my personal space, right? We do this all the time. Nowadays, it means a whole lot more. Everybody's not in your bubble, right? We can't be in anybody else's bubble. So you have this personal space, and we're talking about what we can control and what we can't control. This is the difference, the wisdom to know the difference. Anything inside my personal bubble, I can control. Anything on the outside of that, I have no control over. I have no control over whether or not my ex-husband drains my bank account. I have control over whether or not he's allowed into it, but that was after the fact, you know what I mean? I have no control if somebody else is in a bad mood and wants to take it out on me. My only control is inside here. I can remove myself. I can walk out and say, hey, we'll talk later. I can say, you know what, this isn't the time right now for us, but I don't have control over someone else's attitude or anything. So they call it the personal bubble, and for me, it's just a matter of, that's kind of a visual thing. And so my bubble is my recovery, inside here. I have to take responsibility for me. I have to call a sponsor when I'm having a bad day and call my sponsor when I'm having a good day. They'd like to hear from that too. They don't only want to hear when you're having a bad day. Believe me, I've been on the other end of that when they only call you when it's really, really bad. I like those calls, but I like the calls also when they've had a really, really good day. Have somebody to share. I have to work my steps. 22 years doesn't matter. I still have to be rigorously honest. I still have to go, oh, you know what? I need to make amends for that because that was not nice. That came out wrong. Maybe I need to go in there and say, I'm sorry. So my attitude and my mistakes, those are all inside my personal bubble. So if somebody else has a bad day, not my responsibility. If I'm having a bad day, my responsibility. The kids are crabby, I can go in the other room. I can ask them if there's something I can help them with, but if it's no, then I can remove myself from it. Everybody has to take responsibility for themselves. Everybody has to grieve in their own way. They have to have this space to do these, and not everyone will like what I say or do. Even in your own family. My taking care of myself, staying inside my own control, sometimes the way I think, and I tell my husband this all the time, the way I think is, I don't think that anybody thinks like me anymore. I just have ways of thinking of things, and I feel them more than I think about them. So, it's my recovery. This was what works for me, and if we can find a happy win-win, then that works, right? I have to do the work for myself, but I don't have to do it by myself. That was always a big thing for me when I learned that in recovery is, I do have to do the work, and it can be painstaking at times. I don't have to do it by myself. There are people out there that will help. There are meetings. I know it's harder now to go to meetings. I know there's online meetings that people can go to, but I know that we have phone lines, we have video chats. Everything can be done over the internet. So I learned to let go and let God, and that's the wisdom to know the difference. If it's not inside my personal bubble, then I have to let go and let God handle it. And I'm not relieving anybody else from their responsibility as long as I stay in my bubble. I'm cleaning my side of the street, and I'm allowing them to clean theirs. And if they don't clean theirs, then I have a choice to stay or go or come back later, maybe when they have cleaned it. So it's kind of like leveling the playing field. If we stay inside our own personal bubble, then it works. So what is your bubble of control? What can you look at inside yourself and say, maybe I should take responsibility for this and stay on my side of the road and clean it? What makes a difference for you? And more importantly, how do you make a difference in the world? Let's pray. Father, Mother God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for everybody listening out there. And we hope that these words land lightly on their heart. They take and use what they can, and they let the rest go. And that we all find that we are in control and we are responsible for our own recovery, and we do the next right thing in that recovery. We thank you for this time. Through the power and the presence and the divine mind, thank you.